are Two Book Ramblers.
A podcast to get you to read beyond the lines.
Like Elvis said, the sun's down and the moon's pretty. It's time to ramble.
About books.
Today, in Two Book Ramblers, books involved in lawsuits.
Books need writers, obviously, and editors, and publishers, and booksellers, but sometimes they also need lawyers. The list that we have for you today includes many famous titles that have required legal services at some point. If you're ready, let's lawyer up.
The first book we have for you is Winnie the Pooh by A.A. Milne. The cute little bear was involved in a dispute with Disney for 18 years. The Salinger family, owners of the rights to Pooh, had licensed them to Disney, but they sued the company claiming Disney had cheated them out of the quote-unquote honey. If you would like to visit the place that inspired 100 Acre Wood, you can visit Ashdown Forest in Oakfield, less than 2 hours south of London. There is a GPS-guided Pooh walk departing from Gill's Lab Car Park. You can find the link to the walk on our show notes.
Another book involved in a lawsuit, The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Salinger sued another author for publishing 60 years later Coming Through the Rye as a sequel to his famous novel. And this book imagined Holden Caulfield, the protagonist of Salinger's book, escaping from a retiring home 60 years after the events of The Catcher in the Rye. Salinger didn't like the idea and he claimed that the book did not really make any relevant reference to The Catcher in the Rye to be called a sequel, and he won the battle, making it impossible for 60 years later to be sold in the US until The Catcher in the Rye didn't enter into the public domain. If you would like to have a sip while you read The Catcher in the Rye, there's a recipe in Tequila Mockingbird, the book by Tim Featherley, that includes rye whiskey, pineapple juice, lemon juice, and ginger beer, and that would go perfect with the reading of The Catcher in the Rye. The drink is called the Rye in the Catcher. Or if you're more into fashion and you would like to sport Holden Caulfield hat, we found two options that we have linked in our show notes if you want to sport something iconic like that.
Another book that needed a lawyer was 3 Cups of Tea by Greg Mortensen, and the subtitle for this one is One Man's Mission to Fight Terrorism and Build Nations, One School at a Time. A lawsuit that was later dismissed was presented against Mortensen, claiming that the charitable work that he described in his book was not real. He built his first school in Corfu, Pakistan, and his perseverance despite the opposition and economic hardship is the reason there are now more than 50 schools in Central Asia. This book is a great bibliotherapy if you're looking for something inspirational to read.
Also involved in a lawsuit, Requiem for a Nun by William Faulkner. This book is a sequel to Faulkner's earlier book called Sanctuary, and this is what happened. Sony was sued by Faulkner State for the unauthorized use of a quote from the book Requiem for a Nun. And the movie in question is Midnight in Paris, and we're going to read you the quote in the book and the quote in the movie for you to decide if this requires legal action or not. Here we go. This is the quote for Faulkner's book. "The past is never dead. It is not even past." While the quote in the movie said, "The past is not dead. Actually, it's not even past." You know who said that? Faulkner. We have chosen this book for our 6th book review this week. And remember, you can share with us your own review in our page. So here we go. Temple Drake's Fate in 3 acts. There is a very memorable cover in the book world for a book that was also involved in a lawsuit, and the book in question is A Million Little Pieces by James Frey. This book was written and advertised as a memoir about rehabilitation from drug and alcohol addiction. However, later James Frey came clean and said that some of the events in the book had been fictionalized. And a settlement refunded readers part of their money if they could offer proof that they had purchased the book before James Frey made the admission. We have chosen the 2005 paperback edition of A Million Little Pieces this week for our cover gallery. If you look at the cover, it has a hand with sugar sprinkles all over it, and the designer, Rodrigo Corral, said that his idea was for the sugar sprinkles to resemble pharmaceuticals, and he put them on top of the hand to reference how they curse through the human body. And now we have arrived to our segment Book versus Book. This week, we have two books that had been involved in lawsuits. They both have movie adaptations, and they both dealt with segregation in the 1930s and 1960s. So here we go. What's your book, Maylene?
Well, my book is one of my favorite books. It's The Help by Catherine Stockett. The author was sued by Aileen Cooper. Aileen Cooper was her older brother's maid, and she claimed that the author had appropriated her image for the character Aileen Clark. A judge later dismissed the case under statute of limitations because it had been a long time since Ms. Cooper had received the book from the author when she decided to take it to court.
The book I chose for Book versus Book this week is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Lee sued her previous agent, Samuel Pincus, because he duped her into signing the copyrights of the book to him while Harper Lee was recovering from a stroke. It is ironic that this book has so many scenes set up in a courtroom and it ended up having to go to court itself. The town in To Kill a Mockingbird is called Macomb, and Harper Lee based it on her own hometown of Monroeville, Alabama. If you would like to visit Monroeville, you can go to Monroeville County Chamber of Commerce website and download a walking tour of the town that would please any book lover. The highlights include a monument to Atticus Finch, and even the old courthouse, where you can actually sit in the same balcony that Scout sits during the famous trial in the book. One of the courtrooms in this old courthouse was replicated exactly for the 1962 movie that stars Gregory Peck. And if you plan to visit Monroeville during April or May, you might be lucky enough to watch staging of the book by the Mockingbird Players. If instead of traveling, you have more of a sweet tooth, maybe you want to accompany the reading of To Kill a Mockingbird with the famous Lane cake. This cake was very popular in the 60s after it was included in the book by Harper Lee. And Southern Living includes a recipe that involves peach schnapps and bourbon. I must say this is not an easy recipe. It involves some preparation and some time, but it is so decadent and so flavorful that it might be worth the effort.
That sounds really good. Listeners, if you're ready, head over to our page, twobookramblers.com, and vote for your favorite between The Help and To Kill a Mockingbird.
We're gonna take a very short pause and we'll be back with guesswork. Welcome back. Let's start with the answer to our last episode guesswork. In case you were wondering, the book that we read the first line and excerpt from last time was As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. Did you guess it right? This week, we would like you to guess the title of the book, whose author was sued by an ex-boyfriend for appropriation of his persona for one of the characters in the book. Here's the first line.
All I can say is this: I am tired of women.
That's a great first line. And now, the excerpt from page 69.
I sat down at the bar and ordered the Jack Daniels. I was hoping not to run into Jimmy, but that would have been asking for too much. He was the first person I saw after I swiveled around on the stool to check out everything, which amounted to nothing.
If you think you know the answer, you can give us your best shot at twobookramblers.com. There's two books coming out this week. Both are mystery thrillers, and I am very excited to read them myself. One of them is Goodnight Beautiful by Amy Molloy. And in this thriller, a newlywed couple moves to upstate New York, and a normal day for them implies the wife staying at home and the husband going to work downstairs in his practice. He is a therapist, and he has a female clientele. But what he doesn't know is that through a vent in his ceiling, the wife can listen to all the conversations happening in his practice on the upper floor. And everything is okay until one day there's a French girl who arrives and things go awry. So if you get excited, as I am, you can get your copy of Goodnight Beautiful by Amy Molloy. The second book that I would like to tell you about coming out this week is Invisible Girl by Lisa Jewell. In this book, there's a guy named Owen, and he's pretty down in his luck. He's 30-something, a virgin, he lives with his aunt. He's being laid off from work under accusations of sexual misconduct. Across the street from Owen lives a child psychologist, and one of his patients, Sapphire, has been feeling abandoned after her therapy with this child psychologist ended. Sapphire disappears one night, and the last person to see her is Owen. If you are intrigued, you can check out Invisible Girl by Lisa Jewell.
Everything we talk about in this episode can be found on our show notes at twobookramblers.com.
Until next time, do as Shakespeare said,
And love all,
trust a few,
do wrong to none.